Hey y'all, Van Lufa here. Today we are going to cover day 3 of the Mollie Tibbetts murder trial with Christian Bahena. Rivera is the gentleman who has been charged with first-degree murder for her. This is day 3, like I said. It took place last Friday, May 21st of 2021. Okay, so if you remember how I spoke in day 2, they were interviewing Pamela Romero, who is the police officer who was doing that 11-hour interview with Mr. Bahena Rivera. She's a native Spanish speaker, so she was the one that they chose her to do the interview. So they started day 3 with the defense cross-examining her. This was the time when I was furious and about threw my phone, and had that female defense attorney been in front of me, I may have strangled her. But anyway, just kidding. Okay, cross-examination of Pamela Romero. She just discussed more of the interview. They played part 3 of the interview. So apparently they had the interview broken down into 7 parts. They played part 3 of the interview. In this clip, the defendant is sleeping. So the defense had to make a huge deal out of the fact that he was sleepy during this interview. And who wouldn't be? It was an 11-hour interview. It ended at like 4:30 in the morning. But apparently the day before, Pamela had said that he never slept. So we had to watch forever of this interview, watching him sleep, just to make a point. They were going to, okay, so, before they played the third video, the state was kind of argued with them for a while because they were like, why are you going to show us 30 minutes of this video that you already showed us yesterday of him being sleepy? I mean, what's your point here, He's like, he does appear to be sleeping. So the defense lawyer was arguing with him about that. And it went on and on and on between the state and the defense. The lawyer was upset, I wrote, and arguing with him about not getting a meal until 9. So she was saying things like, so he gets up and goes to work at 5 a.m., isn't that right? He worked a full 12-hour shift before he did the interview, isn't that right? That was her favorite thing, isn't that right? And just went on and on and on, and how he didn't get a meal until 9 p.m., and how tired he was, and how hungry he was. And I mean, let's get real, though. They're trying to set a precedent here. We all know what they're trying to do. But half of the day was spent about the defense lawyer trying to, assassinate the character of this police officer. It was actually a torture to watch. Let's see. I just wrote more arguing ad nauseum about him sleeping. Okay, and I just wrote a bunch about this. I wrote, this defense attorney appears to be stalling. She apparently is just going to talk about this for days. And then this, again, the defense attorney is asking this police officer if she knows anything about false confessions. Then she started in on her and asked her if she was certified to be an interpreter, which apparently she didn't go through some, certification process, but she does this all the time. Many police departments around that area use her as an interpreter because she is a native speaker. She was born and raised in Mexico until she moved up here, as a younger child. But the defense attorney wanted to find any way to tear her down. Then they took a recess, and then there just seriously was more arguing. So let me explain something here, because I haven't mentioned it yet, and I just discovered it. So apparently the defense made a motion pre-trial stating that that his Miranda rights were not evoked properly. Apparently he was not read his Miranda rights properly. So the defense team had made a motion then that there are certain statements that were going to be suppressed during this trial. Statements where, he told the police that he took her to a cornfield, that he did it, that he dropped her off. Any statements of him in the car, giving them direction of where to go. Any statements of him showing the police officer right where her body was in the cornfield. was all going to be suppressed. And apparently the judge went along with that motion. But so now, the fact that the defense lawyer kept going on and on about how tired he was and how crappy he was treated that day and he didn't have enough food and the meal that they gave him was too small and he was so tired and blah, 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 blah. The state came back during this recess when they argued it out before the jury got back and said, look, this is what you're going to do. You're going to go on, drone on and on about him being sleep deprived and being sleepy and that this caused him to make a false confession. If you're going to do this, then we are going to allow those suppressed comments in the trial. The jury needs to hear these things. I don't agree with this. This is crap. And so after they argued back and forth quite a few times about that, the judge just finally ended up saying, you know what, I'm not going to allow those statements right now. Let's just kind of see where this goes. And I do know that, you know, it does get brought up later, but I mean, this was an argument. This day 3, infuriated me. So it is a murder trial. The person who admitted and confessed to her murder is on trial, but they're not going to allow his statements in the trial. I don't know. My opinion is the defense attorneys are clowns. So anyway, they got that all straightened out, and then the jury came back in. On redirect, the prosecutor was just saying, was he ever confrontational in the interview? No. She was told that there was a hair found in his vehicle, and they asked if she had searched the vehicle. She said no. Was the sleep defendant sleep deprived when you interviewed him? No. And that went on forever. That poor lady finally got to step down from the stand this day. State's witness number 13 is Amy Johnson. She works for the Iowa DCI Crime Lab. She's been there for 19 years, and she is a crime scene tech. She has done approximately 50 crime scenes. She was asked to process 2 vehicles, the Malibu and the Nissan Altima. On 8/20 of 18, the Malibu was seized and then driven to the DCI Crime Lab garage. The car was not processed until 8/22, and there's a reason for that, and I will get to that in a minute. It took over 3 hours to process the Malibu. The reason why she didn't do it until 8/22 was because on 8/21 was when Mollie was found, and she was called to that scene to process that scene. In the search of the trunk, she described the items in the trunk. Some of the items had blood on them. One of them was a football. Another one was a fishing pole that was in 2 pieces. They showed pictures of the blood stains on the rubber seal of the trunk. There were 4 areas that tested positive for blood in the trunk. When she looked at the car preliminarily at the sheriff's office on 8/20, the blood stain on the rubber seal was not apparent, so she didn't see it at that point. I don't think she didn't process it there. She didn't go through it with a fine-tooth comb like she did once they got it back to the DCI garage. But of course, they had to make a big deal about that. But then she talked about how she was called back by the sheriff's office on 8/21 to process a body. She did walk onto the scene in the cornfield with the medical examiner. And then they showed her photos of the crime scene and the body. Thank goodness, the worst one of the body, they did not show us. Thank God, because I was like, please don't show it, please don't show it. They showed enough. They searched the area around, and they found her black shorts, a pink headband, and her underwear. So they were not on her body, but they were quite a ways away from her body, but they did find them in the cornfield. Then they showed a crime scene diagram that she drew. So she kind of drew like the placement of the body and then where things were in relation to her body, like where were the shorts, that kind of thing. They were just discussing the clothing that they found. It took her 4 to 5 hours, she said, to process the scene. On cross-examination, the defense attorney was just asking her about cross-contamination, wanted to know what all their protocols were for doing things like that. Again, lawyer trying to discredit her. The same old, same old. And then on redirect, the prosecution was just discussing with her how she had also been called to process the trailer of Mr. Rivera. State's witness number 14 was Tara Scott. She also works for the DCI. She is a criminalist in the DNA section. They talked about how on 7/19/18, so the day after she went missing, she was called to Blake Jack's house to process it. Basically, they wanted her to see if she saw any evidence of foul play or a struggle, and she did not find anything like that. The house was at 622 West Des Moines Street in Brooklyn. At that point, she did find her wallet, though, Mollie's wallet, and a water bottle with the initials MT on it. So another thing that she was doing there, besides just looking for foul play in the home, she was also looking for things to build Mollie's DNA profile. So she found the water bottle, I believe there was a pop can, and other things to get Mollie's DNA. She also had gotten a hairbrush and a toothbrush and other things from Mollie's parents' house as well for that. And she also did buccal swabs on her immediate family to also help build the DNA profile on Mollie. And they talked a lot about that. She was there for 4+ hours at the Blake Jack home. Then they just showed photos of the home as it appeared that day that she went. They talked a lot about DNA analysis and what she does for that. They did do analysis on the clothing that was found. And then she also she tested some items from Mr. Rivera's house. And they talked about different, the blood removal from the car. Of note, they also pulled out like the entire liner of the trunk and tested that as well. On cross-examination, they asked her about her education. They talked about the investigation of Blake Jack's house, asking about testing the pop can. Apparently, Mollie's DNA was found on the mouth of the pop can, but there was also more DNA on there. It appeared to be the DNA of a male, and so the defense attorneys were, going, hey, this is somebody who's missing. You don't know where she is. You don't know if she's been murdered, and you find other DNA on the pop can and you don't test it, kind of a thing. And then they talked about the DNA testing on her clothes. So what the defense really wanted to drive home here was they did test her shorts and her underwear and did not find any traces of DNA, no seminal fluid or anything like that. And then we'll talk about it. When they found Mollie, the only clothing that she had on was her pink sports bra. She did not have on underwear. She did not have on shorts. So they found her mostly nude, right? So obviously when they went to test her body to see if she had been assaulted sexually, they couldn't tell because the body was, it was there for a month. It was so decomposed. So they couldn't tell that. But let's see. In the interview with the cop, he called her hot. He called her attractive. And when they found her, she was mostly nude. Her shorts were 20 or 25 feet away from the body. Same with her underwear. There's no doubt in my mind that he did that. No doubt in my mind. So what the defense was going with was, well, you didn't find any seminal fluid on the underwear. You didn't find any of his fluid on his shorts because they weren't on her body. That's why they were taken off and thrown. That's why there was nothing of his DNA on her stuff. She wasn't wearing them at the time. But okay. And also, DNA wasn't found because they were laying there for a month, and with the weather and the heat and the humidity and everything else, all the DNA had been degraded by that time. So, but they just made a big deal. There's no DNA on there. He must not have done it. No, that is not the case in my opinion. So that was day 3. It was a very frustrating day for me, but I got to get caught up because now I understand the jury's gone to deliberation. I've got to get caught up on this day, on this trial. But that's what we were looking at for this time. Anyway, I got dogs coming in and out. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Keep watching for the trial, y'all, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.